For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. For the record, ain't trying to link, no time to waste. For the record, 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 for the record. Been a little too nice to y'all. Now I gotta up price on y'all. Snake eyes on dice for y'all. Shoulders on ice for y'all. A6 all the hate. I won't get a ball today. Got lost in the ball and A's. I'm flipping the bars, I'm flipping the on record, off record. I still count wins when they got it. On record, off record. I let them take advantage. I was wildin'. On record, off record deals. Tell them talk to Colin for the quote. On record, off record. I still want the act, not the ghost. For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. For the record, ain't trying to link, no time to waste. For the record, for the record. Price on y'all, snake eyes on dice for y'all, shoulders on ice for y'all. A6 all the hate, I won't get a ball today. Got lost in the ball and A's. I'm flipping the bars, I'm flipping the on record, off record. I still count wins when they got it. On record, off record. I let them take advantage. I was wildin'. On record, off record deals. Tell them talk to Colin for the quote. On record, off record. I still want the act, not the ghost. For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record. You ain't tryna grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. Impressions, I'm succumbing to it. I've been giving yeses when I shouldn't do it. I complete with check with the loser, and I'm barely moving, but I'm still gon' boost 'em. I can't work on winners when I know you're losing. So looking for a way inside your mind. It's a haze of mysteries. All I see is smoke and mirrors and the reflecting memories. I need to figure out how things are twined. The ropes are choking us. If only I could blow away the heavy clouds up in our sky. I see you. Can you see me too? Tell me how it feels to know that I cannot let you go. My veins, they are strained, 'cause my heart is blue for you. I would do anything just to have you once again. I've lost my weakness, only void inside my bones, paralyzed like a dog, tears filling up within. I gave you all there was to give me. The next move's on you, spitting out all excuses. Give me something that is real. They say it's better to have love than none, but all I feel is doubt. Will you turn this ship around before the night will close us down? I see you. Can you see me too? Tell me how it feels to know that I cannot let you go. My veins, they are strained, 'cause my heart is blue for you. I would do anything just to have you once again. I've lost my weakness, only void inside my bones, paralyzed like a dog, tears filling up within.
Hello and welcome in, everybody. It's another edition of Esports Weekly. I'm Ryan Bailey. I'll be your host as per usual. We got a jam-packed show today. A lot of SPL to go over in particular. Of course, we'll also touch on the Smite Console League and the Smite Minor League toward the back end of the show. But I do want to start with where we talked a lot about last week, and that's what Dignitas was going to do in a big week for them. They were coming off a bit of a rocky start, I'd say, to Phase 2, and they had two big matchups last week in Pittsburgh Knights and in Splice. And we were saying that this is going to determine where we feel like this team is going to be moving forward. I mean, Phase 1, Dignitas, clearly one of the best teams in the entire league. So where are they going to be when it came to Phase 2 after Midseason Invitational and the Renegades really ascending quickly to take over that top spot in the SPL? Well, we got our answer. I would give their, if this is the test week and I'm teaching them, I'd give their grade as a B. And I almost went B+. And my reasoning is that their opening game against the Pittsburgh Knights was incredibly impressive. And I feel like we could really see the amount of time and effort and game planning they put in order to beat PK on Thursday. It worked out well for them. PK did adjust pretty well and made some games difficult down the road, but Dignitas ultimately ended up winning and got a lot of credit for that. Now, normally it sounds like, hey, that should be an A, right? Maybe even an A+. You can't expect them to go undefeated against PK, a team of that caliber. So a 3-1 or 3-2 doesn't really matter. You got the win, that's what matters. And I agree. But then Splice happened. Then Friday happened, and Splice just looked like they outclassed Dignitas. And at some point, as the teacher, you got to go, I don't think you were that equipped for that game. I don't think they were that equipped for that evaluation. Splice is on a different level right now. But we got what we wanted out of that week as Smite fans, as Smite analysts, all that kind of stuff. We got what we wanted. We got a better understanding of the hierarchy of the SPL right now as we stand. And Dignitas is clearly in the second tier. It's not like they're super far away. They might be the top of the second tier. In fact, I think they are the top of the second tier right now. But they're in the second tier. The top tier, Renegades, Splice, Rival. In that order. It wasn't just Dignitas that played last week. Let's take a look at the schedule so you can see what else everyone had in store. E United managed to crush down Obey Alliance. Obey did take a game off PK on Friday and quite a good showing. Again, Dignitas and Splice was close. It's not like Splice completely wiped the floor with them, anything like that. Dignitas at the top of Tier 2, but they are in Tier 2 right now. Now, like I said, the top tier for me overall is Rival, Renegades, and Splice. Not in that order. It's Renegade, Splice, Rival. It's actually the other way around. But we'll see if Rival can bounce up those standings, as they will be playing the Renegades later on this week. So it should be a really good time. Look, overall, I really feel like this league right now is the most competitive it's ever been. Just because I'm saying that Splice is a tier above Dignitas doesn't mean that it's guaranteed that it's going to go Splice's way. I mean, you saw right there, it was a 3-2 victory in Splice's favor. Dignitas had great games in that set. And if you're a Dignitas fan, despite the B grade, I think you should be very encouraged from last week's kind of outcome overall. But there's not that much time left. It's 13 weeks in a phase? We are going into week number 7 right now. We're halfway through, and it's time to get down to brass tacks and realize that you've got to play catch up if your name is not Renegades. Everyone else, even among the top tier, between Splice and Rival, they need to catch up. At least we think so right now. This is a big week for Rival because they don't just end up playing up against the boys of Renegades. They also have Space Station Gaming, so got to win that one. Get ready for Friday for Renegades. Let's take a look at our top 5 plays from Week 6 in the SPL and across all of our leagues, of course, presented by Respawn. And we'll kick it up with variety. Listen, anytime I get to see some tier play, I'm down. The flip over the wall, double fearless, kills Emilzy. They lose the Pyromancer, but don't worry about it. That was awesome. I'm always down for a tier play on the top 5 plays, and we find it at number 5. For number 4, it's Ice Ice Baby. His play this week was phenomenal. As you kind of imagine that he's going to have a good week up against the Obey Alliance boys. This one was impressive work for sure. I mean, basically every game Ice Ice Baby made a play, but this one in particular, Obey is starting to come back. They're on the precipice, and then they get 3-man dunked by Ice Ice. Incredible play by him. This saves the game for United, make no bones about it, as well as great credit for the positioning for Emilito and Big Man Tings for some off-the-wall positioning that ends up saving them the game and setting up Ice Ice Baby. Number 3, hey, I might have to get some production help here, but I'm pretty sure there's a player in the European minor league, Johnny, right? Johnny from Flashpoint. He's got like one god you don't give him. What is it again? I don't know. Maybe it'll be on the play. Right, it's Ao Kwang. You don't give Johnny Ao Kwang. And why is that? It's because Out Cold was slightly in the lead before this fight. They were playing really well, and then Johnny gets himself a triple kill and the game is over. Don't give him Ao Kwang. I don't get it. You can ban it in the second phase. He 10th picked it. I don't understand. I don't get it, and I never will. Number 2, number 2 is one of those plays. We had a lot of really top-end plays, but this was Weekend making huge plays. Look at that. When you get to play an assassin, you get to do stuff. Could Terra have done this? I don't think so. Weekend wins Obey Alliance the game against the Pittsburgh Knights. The Pittsburgh Knights with his Thor play in game 1 of that set. Weekend should play more assassins. Just an opinion, I suppose. And number 1 play of the week comes courtesy of this actual week. If you weren't watching on Monday in the SCL, Wolves has had a passive for a long time that I've been adamant that he does more damage than everybody else. But you don't group up on top of King Arthur, man. I get it. He's only level 10. He's crippled for a minute. You don't do this. Yeet! Crushes him with the triple kill, the overhand smash. Wolves does eventually die, but it takes a little bit. He's got an ability that goes like this, and then an ability that goes like this. Once he does this one's coming. Don't stand like that. That's my help to the SCL. Don't stand like that against Wolves. That's a bit of a tip for you guys. Let's take a look at the schedule that's upcoming for this week in the SPL. As I mentioned, it's a big one for Rival. They start off with a game that they should be able to take easily in Space Station Gaming. SK Renegades is going to be sneaky fun. Make sure you tune in on Thursday for that one, no doubt. And then Friday is going to be a barn burner to kick us off. Rival Renegades, 2 of the best teams in the league. By my estimation, teams 1 and 3 in the power rankings right now. Rival might be able to bounce up and reclaim that top spot if they were able to win convincingly on Friday. But this is one that I've been looking forward to since the midseason invitational, and you should be looking forward to it as well. Then E United versus Space Station Gaming. Space Station, of course, taking likely the worst loss in SPL history in Phase 1 at the hands of E United after winning the first 2 games by way of E United not being there and then getting reverse swept. Maybe this could be the beginning of the redemption arc. This would be a good way for Space Station to get it if they can find a victory on Friday. So stay tuned. We're going to be going over all of those teams and more when we come back here on Esports Weekly. Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. As I mentioned, Rival is in that top tier of teams right now, but where do they rank among those top tier of teams? How about facing off against the literal best? Renegades is a way to measure yourself so far halfway through Phase 2. Talk about their odds. We've got Rival correspondent John Finch joining us here on the desk. I mean, Finch, coming out of Phase 1, Rival, the best team everyone was feeling like. Then a disappointing MSI, an okay phase 2. They've looked really good against everyone except for Splice.
Right.
But I think this is their biggest test yet.
I do think so too, and this is a huge week for them. They definitely understand that as well coming in. I had a chance to talk to PBM this time coming into this week, and he gave me a ton of information. He was at the gym, but he took some time to send me a whole bunch of stuff out of the team's feeling. And they said this week could be huge, not just because of the teams are playing, but they have a really good chance to get towards locking up that 1 seed. If they can get both wins here, and I mean overall, if they're able to get both these wins away from this week, then it'll be huge for them. So they're taking 100% serious. They know how big this week is. They're coming in ready.
Yeah, is there any concern because they do play Space Station on Friday or on Thursday and then Renegades on Friday? Space Station is the team that no one is expecting anything out of these days.
Yeah.
They are the bottom seed in a lot of power rankings. Is there any concern for you that they might overlook Space Station?
Maybe. Before I heard from PBM, there might have been, but he said he actually thinks that's one of the team's issues was that they didn't prep for everybody equally. That maybe they're going into some matches where they were expected to win, in quotes, that maybe they wouldn't have, prepared for them the right way. That's out of the window, he said, for the team now. They're making sure that for everybody they're going to be prepping the exact same way. So I doubt Space Station's going to be able to catch this team off guard if that's a renewed focus for them.
You mean like theoretically if they were going to play like a minor league team at a LAN, they may not have in the past prepared as hard as they should have?
That might have been something that may have happened to them once. And it's interesting that you bring that up because of that loss to Armada that we're referring to. They actually didn't play Renegades in MSI. Renegades technically got the title without going through Rival, right, of being our current top teams. So that's why I think this set's huge. Technically, Renegades haven't been tested by Phase 1's best. Technically, if you want to be, however you would look at them losing to Armada, maybe Armada take that title or whatever. Yeah.
Sure. Armada, best team in the world. I mean, undisputed, no doubt about that. I mean, that is, I think, where I want to focus, though, is the overall team environment right now. I mean, so many players from Rival have had great seasons so far, but a lot of the talk is still around Final K, the way that he has played in the solo lane. He's got Aqua and Nika this week.
Yeah.
How do you think he matches up there?
I think Final K has a pretty important matchup here against Aqua and Nika, but I do think that we still favor Aqua in both, or not Aqua, but Final K in both of those matchups. He's going to be huge for them in this one. I mean, you can see why I called it Rankings Whiplash. They're going to go from Space Station all the way down to fighting Renegades later on. But, I mean, I don't know. Personally, I thought the big one to watch was Twig coming into this week because he's got to play up against Cheerio, who plays very supportive at a lot of the times, but then I'm against Sino, who's just pure all-in aggression. So it's kind of whiplash in that sense too. I think going to have to swap styles. Final K is going to be critical for him, I think, in that in being able to do that effectively. Is Twig going to be spending time in the solo lane maybe to get ahead? There's been a lot more ganks there, a lot more fights around blue buffs. Perhaps those two in the way they synergize could be really critical this week.
I mean, that is certainly one thing. Is where Twig goes, a lot of times Rival goes as well. That's it against Armada. Twig struggled, so did the rest of the team. I think that's not exclusive to Twig. I mean, junglers are very important. Regardless
despite
of
what they say, junglers are still very, very important.
Yeah,
yes.
Whether or not they're good, they are important,
right.
Kind of no matter what. And I think that Scream has really proved that for Splice so far this year.
Yes.
I mean, Rival, I don't know. I feel like if they win this set against Renegades, are they again the best team in the SPL? Is it that simple?
I think so too, even though they lost to Splice. And I think people are kind of giving too much weight to that loss to Splice. I know that team is really strong. But Rival, I mean, they were telling me themselves, they felt like there were a lot of unforced errors that they made in that set with that loss. And the way that PBM labeled it specifically was he felt like maybe there were some individual, kind of almost selfish or lazy plays that the team shouldn't have been making that really hurt them. They still had some really strong Phoenix defenses in those sets anyway, stretching those games out longer than they should have been. That's a team that's confident that if they got to run it back with Splice, they could take it with some adjustments.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, this is a team that's really been able to adjust very well to teams throughout their history as individual players. So why couldn't they do it as the unit? Against Space Station Gaming, should be pretty short and sweet, I imagine, on this preview. I mean, this is a game where if you are really the best team in the league or you feel like you can be there, Space Station Gaming should not give you much problem. Though.
Exactly. That's why I was highlighting Twig sort of as the guy for me, because I think if you do a really good job shutting down Sino, especially with some of the stuff we've been hearing about Space Station lately, there's a really good chance that you can just kind of take that team out of contention for the rest of that set. So if Twig ends up being the better jungler, I think there's a good chance that he is, then I think Rival should be able to take that set pretty easy.
Okay, but how about Renegades? Because this is the real test for them on Friday.
Much tougher.
I mean, the way the Renegades start is very different than a lot of other teams. A lot of teams have adopted Renegades start, and Renegades have since switched it a little bit. Cherio's playing very well. I think Nika's playing the best he ever has. Where do you attack if you're a rival?
Man, I feel like you still haven't said the most important name, which for me is Raffer. This dude's been playing like a monster up until this point. And that's what's going to be the big issue, I think, as well. I talked about how Twig needs to match up against Sino, but what about PBM here up against Raffer? There are some times where PBM will play things like Horus, really aggressive picks, and can get punished for them, and that can kind of put rival behind. Raffer doesn't do that. Raffer likes to play supportive stuff. He likes to keep the team healthy. You heard how they talked about the confidence that it gave them. If PBM's not able to match that kind of protective nature, I think, from Raffer, then rival might struggle here again.
This is going to be one of the best regular season sets we have all year
Huge.
long. So make sure you're tuning in early on Friday for sure. Finch, thank you very much for joining us and breaking down one of the best teams in the league. Now we've got to talk about what has been the other end as of late. Space Station Gaming trying to return to their former glory. Stay tuned. We'll see if they can. Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. Space Station Gaming used to be the top end of the SPL many moons ago, but as of late has not been quite there. But they've got 2 games this week to try and turn it around and talk about their chances. We've got Tom Battinger, their correspondent, joining us here on Esports Weekly. Tom, you're a little bit more amped up. It's been a while since we've seen Space Station Gaming. Do you think that's kind of revitalized this team?
No.
Oh, okay. Why are you amped up then?
I wasn't here last week, so you get
Okay. Yeah, I
a
get
little bit of extra juice.
Understandable. Look, they've got 2 really tough games this week. Do you think that having all their expectations removed ends up helping this team? Because even
good question.
Even recently, like this, after MSI, even I think there were still expectations for this team about getting better and improving and being one of the top end teams again. I feel like that dream has been put to the wayside. Everyone has realized that where we are right now with this squad, and I think that might be freeing almost.
Yes, I think in theory it's freeing, Ryan. At the end of the day, we say often when it comes to sports and competition that there's a percentage that's mental.
Yeah.
It's not 100%, and so you've got to be good at the game, man. And so is that freeing? Will they improve? Maybe. Will they find wins? I just don't think so, man. I hate to be the guy coming up here and saying it's not going to happen, but it's not going to happen.
I mean, what is the team mentality like as of late?
Honestly, real talk, the team is understanding of the format. They're like, listen, we're not going to win. So the next couple of weeks are a training ground. They are very much looking at placements for Worlds already. They're not really looking at, trying to win this season. They're not really trying to win these games in the sense that not that they are throwing everything. They're using this as the experimental phase. They're going to try some oddball strategies. They're going to try some different things because now bringing home the win is always the goal, and that kind of cuts into what you can actually perform in practice on the big stage. Now it's all about performance and practicing, and if a win comes their way, absolutely, that's obviously the goal, but there's no more like, oh man, we lost it, we can't get it. It is all about going to school, and I think it's a much healthier environment because if you can take these next couple of weeks, I come up here and they're not going to win these matches this week. They're not going to. I'll put it in stone. But if you spend these next couple of weeks internalizing these losses, looking at what you've done, and working to improve it, Worlds can be a different story, and I am here for that. We saw what happened to Sino and Splice. They just exploded. Trifecta didn't win, but they went on a tear at Worlds. This could be that moment for Space Station. We're talking Sino Shore, Worlds MVP. We're talking Aquarius, great player. Jeff Hindley and Annister have been kind of under the microscope. But Barracuda has carried games to victories. Yeah. This is a team that I don't think we throw to the wayside with respect to the bigger picture, but they're not winning this week.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 2 tough opponents, and I want to highlight Aqua in particular because he has his hands full this week. I mean, first it's Final K, and then it's Benji Thursday, Friday. I mean, I feel for the guy. How do you think that he can do in those matchups?
Landing phase is totally fine for Aqua. I really don't think there's an issue there. I think Aquarius is going to be able to hold his own and make it work. We've seen this repeatedly at a Space Station Gaming, that Aquarius can sometimes fall victim to his own lead. I have a phrase I say: play your lead, but don't let your lead play you. Especially as a solo laner, you want to be aggressive and say, hey, I've got my level lead, I'm going to make the transition. But sometimes Aquarius can go and bite off a little bit more than he can chew. As long as he keeps himself in check, I think Aquarius can dance with the best of them. The team situation is different, but if we're just looking at that lane, Aquarius can absolutely do it.
Now he's going to have to if Space Station want to claw their way back out of what has been the basement as of late. Rival's their first matchup on Thursday. I mean, Rival is coming in hot. I do think that with Rival having Renegades on Friday, maybe there's an opportunity where Space Station gets a little bit overlooked here.
I don't. I think that Rival is there are 3 teams, in my personal opinion, that are the conversation for the best teams in the league in the world, and Space Station is very far away from that. I think Rival can come in not thinking about Space Station and still bring home the win. As I said, no disrespect intended towards the black and yellow. Love those guys, pulling my Stephen A. But real talk, it's
Are you great friends with them, or?
Good friend of mine, but real talk, it's about later on down the road. Lose these games, lose gracefully, and take notes as to why you lost these games, and figure out how you can fill these holes. Scrimming is one thing, being able to play on the big stage is another. Getting practice, doing really core strategies on the big stage is a valuable experience in SSG. Like I said, they're not going to win this week, Ryan, but later on, we'll see what happens in placements.
I imagine that many of the casters here feel like this one's going to go Rival's way. No one going the other way this time around. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Let's talk about E United, though. I mean, E United has had games where they don't look like themselves. They play down to their competition occasionally. They lost to Luminosity earlier this year. The Luminosity, of course, big improvement, so that's an asterisk in my mind. Do they have a better chance here?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's because every time E United take the field, they have a chance of losing. I think that is absolutely something, maybe that's a nothing phrase.
Yeah, I mean, John Finch would attack you for that.
Yeah, that's kind of a nothing phrase. But really, E United, people like to say team that plays up or down, they strike out a lot, man. Like,
they're Aaron judging it.
Yeah, they're Adam Dunn in it. They're just they go up there and they swing for the fences, and sometimes BMT goes 10-0.
I do think that if I was a Space Station player and there was one game that I could win, if it's not like the best team or whatever, I think getting revenge against the United for what happened to us in Phase 1 would be the best motivational sort of boon I could give myself as a player.
And if there's any credence to like saving your gas from one game to the next, which I don't think there is. I think you go out, you try your best against Rival, and you go out and you try your best against E United is a reachable goal.
Sure.
If Space Station Gaming win against Rival, I'm buying a lottery ticket. If Space Station Gaming win against E United, I'm going, all right, that makes sense. I can see it.
Fair enough. We'll see if that's what ends up coming to pass. Tom, thank you very much for joining us talking Space Station Gaming. Renegades have been the undisputed best team so far in Phase 2. Will that continue against Rival this week? Stay tuned to find out.
What's up, Smite fans? Aggro here. Listen, you guys have been loving Roll Q. We've been loving the support you've been giving it. And really, we're just trying to listen to what you guys want. And what everyone seems to want to hear about is jungle right now. All this talk on Twitter. Jungle's bad. It's worthless. My role sucks. It's all nonsense. And I sat down with 4 of the best junglers to ever do it in order to see if they think that's actually the case. Hopefully you check it out.
Pleased to meet you, human. I don't have a spirit animal because I am the spirit animal. Stay back or you will not like what happens next. You never know what we might be up against. This should keep us safe. Humans think I'm indifferent, but I just don't have any fox left to give.
Welcome back, everybody. Everyone is chasing the Renegades right now, but they've been riding away on the horse for what feels like a couple weeks. It has been a couple weeks since mid-season invitational. We've got Anatoly, the correspondent for Renegades, standing by here. Toli, I mean, Renegades have been the best team in the league since the mid-season invitational. I don't think anyone is really contesting that. But I feel like this is their biggest test yet. Even against Splice, where they had the rematch,
yes,
I still felt like Renegades were pretty heavily favored. I don't know how much I feel that way. I feel like Rival's coming up. I mean, when you're number one, you've got the target on your back, right? I mean, are Renegades ready for this sort of matchup?
I think they are because of the fact that they beat Splice, Renegades beating Splice, but then Rival lost to Splice. So based off of those, you would think on paper that there should be a slight edge going into Renegades, but this could be a back-and-forth matchup. You never really know because the last time that these teams faced off was in week number 12. It was Rival with a clean sweep. But then again, it doesn't matter how you end that split if you're able to still go undefeated in the midseason invitational.
Exactly. But they didn't have to play Rival is the big thing. I mean,
That's true.
They didn't play Rival at that midseason invitational. I mean, I just feel like Renegades are still in the position, though, where they're able to set the pace of the meta. I mean, everyone is still chasing what they're doing. I mean, we've seen a million on-her picks exclusively because Dardes played it really well for a long time. I mean, I feel like Renegades is just a matter of do they have something else ready to go for when someone has figured out the meta that they really developed during MSI.
And it's not just the on-her for Dardes. He's been playing the Shibalonke now as of recent outside of the Amusin Cobb. So you got to watch out for Dardes, but you also have to watch out for Nika. Between these two players and the current active Season 6 players outside of Baskin, the inactive SPL player that has 8.4 KDA, Dardes is at number 2, and we have Nika at number 3. And the only thing that separates these two players is 82 over 100,000 of a fraction.
Wow, that is crazy. Yeah. That is very, very close for sure. I mean, these guys have really dictated the meta for quite some time now, and I feel like they are hard to pick and ban against. We've seen teams try and ban out Raffer a whole lot, but his God pool is proving to be too big to ban out. I mean, where do you go against the Renegades?
It's hard. I think you do go on Raffer because out of all the players in the Renegades, Raffer has the least diversified God pool, at least in the terms of what he's picked so far in Phase 2, having played only 4 different gods in 8 games, whereas Nika having playing 6, Cherio playing 6. So I think you don't focus on the soul lane or the jungler. If I'm on Rival side, I think I'm leaning a little bit towards that long lane. The Arkle versus a Funballer matchup should be a spicy one.
Yeah, Funballer has been the one to play the most different things, I think, in that long lane. He'll still play the Hunters from time to time. He'll pull out the Chang'e, he'll pull out the Zhong Kui. Arkle has only played traditional. He's only played Hunters and things like Chronos. Do you think that helps Renegades?
I think that's going to help them a lot because so far, Arkle has played 5 Hou games and also 4 on-her games. So he's very easy to ban out, having only played 4 different gods in 12 games, whereas we're seeing on the side of Renegades, Funballer playing 5 different gods, mostly Thoth, a little bit of Oleron, so more magical focused.
It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, to watch that long lane and how well Funballer can handle a guy who's playing very traditionally right now, but that's not who he's got to go up against first. First, it's SK Gaming on Thursday, and this is not an overlooked sort of match. Are you concerned that Renegades might be too focused on Rival for Friday?
That could be the case. You never really know how they have been preparing to go for 2 teams in 1 week. There's a lot of preparation that each of these teams take into one specific match to be able to double load that into 2. They have to make sure they watch out for SK because Sanford Soccer could be bringing the heat. I have to be worried a little bit for Cherio in that matchup.
Especially with the way Sam has been playing as of late. He's been playing very well, and Zapman had such a great Phase 1 and really soloed basically everyone he played against. You know him and Funballer are going to be that's going to be a lane to watch for sure.
I think so. There's going to be a lot of fireworks in that long lane. For the SK matchup, SK are beating the teams that they need to beat between the Obeys and the Luminosities, but then they can't find the victories over the higher tier teams, losing to both E United and Pittsburgh Knights. They could easily struggle against Renegades.
I think that's a fair assumption. That brings us to Friday then, where they do get a chance to match up against this Rival squad. Basically, anywhere you look, I think there's a really fun matchup to watch. We talked about Funball versus Arkle, FineOK versus Nika, I think is going to be a great one. Where are you looking in this matchup?
I got to look at the long lane, like I mentioned before. I think that if you can take out the Hou and the Yonher from Arkle, I'm curious to see what he's going to select, especially against such a diverse god pool coming out of Funballer. But then the opposite side lane, the soul lane matchup, like you mentioned, Nika versus FineOK. As much of diversification that Nika has, FineOK with more.
That's right. FineOK will play just about anything under the sun in Smite in that solo lane. Plus, we haven't even got a chance to talk about PBM versus Raffer. I mean, these are the 2 leaders for these teams. And I think that when you see PBM kind of get taken out of the game against, like he did a little bit against Splice, like he did against Armada, that's where Rival tends to struggle. And I wonder if Raffer and the rest of Renegades are going to really try and focus Mike out.
Could be the case. They both prefer their Kumbhakarnas from time to time. The Horus could be a highly contested pick going into this matchup. I think that where these 2 players start far, we haven't seen any speed buff invades from either of these two recently, but the way Twig has been playing in the jungle with the Habwas, the Odins, the Ares in his very last set up against Splice, that could be a target point that Renegades could exploit.
Certainly possible. Let's take a look and see what all the casters have to say as far as predictions go, and I'm anxious to see. It is all Renegades. That is crazy to me.
Well, that's against SK though, right?
No, that's against Rival. That's the predictions against Rival. Yeah, I'm shocked that it's all Renegades. Not to say the Renegades aren't favored, because I do think they are, but this is Rival we're talking about.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by this?
A little bit surprised that no one chooses Rival. And
Right.
who's the Rival correspondent? Is it Finch?
It is Finch.
Yeah, so even Finch not going for his own team.
That's right.
Wow.
Hey, I mean, when you've been playing this well for the Renegades, I mean, I can't really blame them. How about for you? Which way do you think this is going to go?
I'm going Renegade still. Even though they did lose to Rival in Week 12 of Phase 1, I think this is still a very strong, momentum-driven team off of MSI.
Do you think it's going to be a 3-1, 3-2?
3-1, probably more realistic. I could see it going 5, and if it does go 5, that would be Rival's best shot at winning.
So if Renegades win against Rival, they've already beaten Splice again this phase. Are they going undefeated the rest of the way? I mean, they still have tough teams, of course,
do.
Dignitas, PK, but as I was saying at the top of the show, I really feel like the top 3 right now are undisputably Renegades, Splice, Rival. Do you think they go undefeated if they win?
It's hard to say because outside of those teams you mentioned, there's also E United you have to watch out for. That's a sleeper team that can easily just turn it on. You never really know what their ceiling is.
Sure. I completely understand. We'll have to wait and see. Totally. Thank you very much for joining us talking Renegades. Speaking of sleeper teams, you can never really know what to expect. SK Gaming have a chance to upset Rival on Thursday if they're overlooking them. We'll talk to Tom Baddinger on the other side to see how they're feeling about their odds. Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. SK Gaming has been a team that I feel like every week we talk about them, it's, well, they might go off this week, and they might go off this week and beat the Renegades and be the first team to do so since the midseason invitational. We've got their correspondent, Tom Baddinger, joining us here in studio. Tom, I mean, like I said, I feel like every week we go, maybe, and then we just kind of wait and see.
I mean, that's SK, man. That's Smite. That's sports. That's life. You have an idea and you just wait and see how it falls out.
But I mean, for a lot of other Smite teams, that's not really the case. Like we know that Renegades are almost certainly going to perform well week to week. We know that Rival's probably going to play pretty well week to week. What makes SK different?
I guess they're just less predictable. There's a little bit more of like a je ne sais quoi.
Why?
Realistically, jokes aside, you're right. They do have this kind of tendency. We talk about kind of playing up and down a decent amount, but I really think it's just SK is just that middle of the pack team, and they have these moments where they absolutely can perform like the best of them, but they just lack this consistency. Now, to answer the question as to where that consistency goes, I think it's more of a fact that this team is still, I say, in as we approach fall, trying to connect the pieces together, because all those pieces kind of individually have their moments. All 5 players on SK Gaming have won a game, arguably a set, for the team. But getting all 5 of those players to work at the same time, if we see that, if we have a run where all SK Game players are at the same level for an extended period of time, I think we've got a team as strong as Renegades, Rival, etc. But they're just not finding that same rhythm every single game.
I get it, but at the same time, I mean, this is one of the only teams that stuck together last year.
Yes.
I mean, they've had more time to get that synergy going than everybody else. At some point, are you worried that it's just not there?
It's not synergy, and if it was synergy, I'd already agree with you. I would have already thrown this team out the window. They work together well. It's just a matter that they're Their batting average is 250. I'm using a lot of baseball metaphors, and I apologize. Really what I'm getting at is that these guys perform, and 250 isn't 0.75% of the time, but realistically it is. These guys all perform like every 5 out of 6 games, and then they have a bad game, but everybody's good games don't match up with their teammates' good games. It's not how they work together. It's almost the opposite of what most Smite teams' problems have been historically, and that it's individual. This team has problems individually being consistent every single time. I love the way they work together. It's just a matter of flip a coin for every player and see how many players show up.
Need 5 heads in a row, and that can be difficult
Exactly.
sometimes. So who do you expect to land on heads this week for sure against the Renegades? Because you will need all 5
Yes.
in order to beat a team as good as the Renegades. But let's focus out one player.
So I think Zapman's going to get beat up by Funball. I really do think Zapman's going to
Like
get beat
before the game?
up. In the hallway? Yeah.
Oh, no.
I think the dual lane for SK loses hard here. I think Raffer and Funball are obscene. You know, I think Renegades just have that on
yes.
lock. Yeah, so it's, I mean, you saw the Raffer reel before. He's a little obscene. I think that the dual lane loses really hard. So you've got to look kind of anywhere else. Trying to mechanically outplay Dardes is a laugh. So you've got to look on the right side of the map. Jungle and over there in the solo lane. I mean, you put everything kind of on your solo laner, which has historically been SK Gaming's kind of weak point. Look, it's an uphill battle, but really what it comes down to, Renegades, this is something that they've prepared for. Talking to Neil earlier on, sorry, I forgot his name. Talking to Neil earlier on in this week, he was like, look, when it comes down to Renegades, it's all about playing your own game. If you go into Renegades, and this is why I think SK Gaming have a shot in the dark at this one, because if you go against Renegades trying to play their game, you're going to lose.
Sure. Because
they are always a chapter ahead of you. You're looking at VODs from last time, and Renegades repeatedly bring something new out. So Neil said, not a chance. That's not what we're looking to do. We're going to play our own game, because that's the only way you wind up beating Renegades. Plus, it's been a while since you got a chance to see them actually play, so trying to go off of homework from weeks ago, is not conducive to a winning environment. So Neil and the boys, Neil's repeatedly said, like, look, man, it's just going to be all about how we're able to kind of convert our own game into the Renegades. They are not thinking about Renegades in the same lens that they look at other teams. And again, like I often say up here, that mentality, I think, is a winning mentality.
Now, Sam, for soccer, you mentioned the right side of the map. I mean, it really runs through him. I think Sam has been playing a lot better as of late. He seems to have found a stride a little bit. But you've got a tough task. I mean, Cherio plays very differently than a lot of other junglers, I feel.
I'll agree with that for sure, and I'll also agree with it's on Sam's shoulders, and he's been performing well recently, which is why, again, the other side, I think SK have a shot in the dark at this. I'm Mr. SK, and I'm here for them all the time. I acknowledge that Renegades are probably going to take this. But because SK Gaming are approaching this very internally, and Sam's been on a streak, SK have a shot here. SK could actually reasonably win. I think it's very important for them to win early in the set. Renegades don't necessarily... It's not a team that you're looking at going, oh, man, they're going to tilt. But if SK can grab an early win or two, they can close that set out. I think they can be a little bit successful.
Let's see what the rest of the casters think is going to happen in this one. And I'm surprised that everyone voted Renegades against Rival. I imagine if everyone's willing to go there and say Renegades versus Rival, okay, Taco is doing something different.
Yeet!
Taco's on the SK side. Maybe she's feeling like Renegades might overlook this SK Gaming squad. Are you going to predict an SK victory as well?
Every week I've come up here, I've said that SK Gaming are probably going to win.
Uh-huh. Go ahead. Uh-huh.
I will say, if I have to put a prediction down...
You got to hit a break. I mean, this is how it goes. You've got to say a name.
I got to say Renegades.
What was that, Tom?
I predict that Renegades will win the match.
Thank you very much, Tom Baddinger, SK Gaming
But SK have a shot. They really do have a shot.
For joining us here on Esports Weekly.
Just got to play consistently.
United, another team that's got an important game this week. Stay tuned. We'll be right back going over the squad that's in the middle of the pack of the SPL for right now.
Zap's still good.
Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. E United is a team that we expect great things from, but might not always get. But we need to get at least some good things from them if they want to beat Space Station Gaming, and certainly that's what we're expecting from them this time around. We've got E United correspondent Anatoly joining us here in studio. Toli, we've seen the E United SSG set before, and remember, finishing a 3-2.
That's true. It was a very impressive 3-2 based on those circumstances.
Yes, E United was not there for the first 2 games, literally, and then ended up showing up winning 3 in a row. And for that reason, I do think that Space Station is going to come into this one a little bit more motivated. I think this is a good one to get some revenge back, steal the mojo back a little bit. And I wonder if United is going to be ready for that level of intensity that I'm expecting from SSG.
The only difference here outside of the Space Station Gaming roster changes was the fact that Vedium was in that matchup, but I think that United only got stronger with the addition of Emilito. Since Emilito's introduction back into Season 6 SPL, before this last Obey set, he was being prioritized in picks and bans. He was trying to get his pick up very often. And in the 29 games before the Obey set, 4 of them were post-secondary ban phase. So in the remaining 25 games, 17 of them were actually first picks for Emil, whether it was Order or the Chaos. But in that Obey set, all 3 of those games were last pick for Emilito. So making a hard 180 switch up, finding the 3-0 clean victory against Obey Alliance, and against Space Station Gaming, a team that's basically cursed, it feels like. Couldn't find victories over both Dignitas and Splice, which is understandable, but then losing to Obey Alliance in the fashion that they did, it just doesn't feel anything is working for Space Station.
Yeah, I think last time you were previewing a Space Station set, you said they haven't won a game since April?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's September, by the way. That's a long time.
A set, not a game.
Yeah, a set victory, of course. And really, I do think a lot of it traces back for me for that back-breaking loss against this E United squad. But E United has shown a propensity to maybe not prepare super hard for teams that they're expected to beat. I mean, they had that trip up a little bit earlier in the season. Do you think that has reignited their focus towards some of these lower-end teams?
I think it has, because after losing to LG in a very epic 5-game set, the way they were able to dismantle Obey Alliance, it looked like they took that really to heart. It seemed that there was something that clicked with them, like, okay, we have to pick it up if we want to be better than just this middle-of-the-pack team. I think that United's ceiling is very high, and they have the capability of beating any team in the league, depending if they show up.
That is certainly a possibility for a team when you've got Benji doing Benji stuff over there in the solo lane. This dude has been consistent basically all year long. When we're talking about the consistency issues for this United squad, I think those really don't extend to Benji. I think he's been great this year.
I agree. This is the matchup to watch. It's going to be Benji versus Aqua in the Space Station Gaming set. So 2 aggressive North American soul laners with very similar god pulls. King Arthur, Jormungandr not so much, but the Achilles as well could be highly contested.
This Benji King Arthur has been dominant so far this year. It seems like a lot of other players are starting to move away from this pick. Benji, not exactly the case. He has been crushing it on the King Arthur as of late, and we probably will continue to do so. I'm also looking at Ice Baby. Sino, a very, very aggressive early game jungler, wants to gank early and often. Ice Baby can get into those sort of rhythms as well, and I wonder if there's going to be some contention for gods like Ratatosker that can set you up for early success.
It's possible. They're going to need to really focus out Big Man if Space Station want to get a victory today, because Big Man's god pool is so diverse, having playing 9 different gods in 12 games. This is allowing the rest of his team to get more comfortable. I think Emilito is the focus point of getting him into the late game. That's that's United's win condition. Is if Emilito's comfortable, then the rest of the team is comfortable. But the fact that he played Morrigan and then Thoth in the Obey set shows that there's more flexibility. He's starting to show signs of life back to his old energy Season 3 days.
No doubt. And Emilito had great plays on that Thoth. The one double kill underneath the mid Phoenix, did it all by himself. I think that's a good sign for this United roster, that Emilito is expanding the god pool, getting more comfortable, willing to take his picks later in the draft, as you mentioned. If Emil can really hit his stride and Kalas can return to form, I think this United does have a really high ceiling. I can agree there.
It's like a vault in a safe that is just impenetrable unless you're F-Dot, obviously.
Right.
But this is a team that you have to watch out for. If Space Station do somehow miraculously find a victory, then I'm going to tip my hat to them, because that would break their curse and also dismantle United at the same time. But the way things have been panning out for both of these teams, all signs are pointing towards United.
I imagine that a lot of the casters are leaning that exact same way. I think
Yeah.
you're hard-pressed to see a caster pick Space Station Gaming until something changes.
Yeah, they're just cursed. It's really unfortunate. In the 10 games they've played, they only found 1-game victory up against Obey Alliance. It's just looking very bad for them. Like, it's not just picks and bans, it's their morale. It's just been taking a big hit. Whenever they go for an objective together, something happens, some small nuanced little thing that just turns it right on its head.
It really goes to show how the margin of error in the SPL
Yeah.
these days is smaller than it has ever been. Totally, thank you very much for joining us and talking about E United. With that, it's time for us to move on to the Smite Console League. We had a big week this week, and of course, we'll touch on all the news in the Smite Minor League, so stay tuned here on Esports Weekly.
What's up, Smite fans? Aggro here. Listen, you guys have been loving Roll Q. We've been loving the support you've been giving it. And really, we're just trying to listen to what you guys want. And what everyone seems to want to hear about is jungle right now. All this talk on Twitter. Jungle's bad. It's worthless. My role sucks. It's all nonsense. And I sat down with 4 of the best junglers to ever do it in order to see if they think that's actually the case. Hopefully you check it out.
Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. The SCL continues. We reached the halfway point for them as well. This was their week 6 that we just saw, actually week 7, I suppose, that we just saw just a couple days ago to go over. We've got John Finch joining us here in studio to go over what we saw in the SCL. Finch,
Yeah.
where do you want to start?
PS4 EU. That's the first card I have here, so I'm down with that. Yeah,
Cool.
that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And if PS4 EU continues the way it has been, it's going to be a close season, it feels like. I mean,
Yes.
Out Cold was the team to beat, might not be any longer.
I'm right there with you, man. Out cold win, but I don't know that I necessarily want to call them the front runners. That's why I wrote that into the
Oh,
lower
that's a
third
nice
that you
lower
see down
third.
there. Exactly. Yeah, it sums up my feelings here perfectly. Aerial Arise is a team that I kind of have been watching. I've been talking about the synergy between Sarpei and Ollie for a while here now. Kana obviously looks really good over there in the solo lane. So these two teams are neck and neck right now. And if I'm correct, these two teams actually play each other next week as well. So this 4-2 matchup between these squads is about to be put to the test, and we'll finally have our clear front runner. But I think this goes to show, man, how quickly the improvements are happening at PS4 EU. Out Cold weren't 4 games ahead or anything like that in Phase 1, but I do think they were the clear favorite team to make it. This
Agreed.
time, I think Aerial Arise actually has a pretty good shot.
And they're tied right now in the win-loss, but it is Out Cold with the plus-minus lead as of late. It's important to get your 2-0s where you can instead of going with those 2-1s, but Aerial Rise might be able to pull forward next week as those two match up, as you mentioned. All right, let's go to Xbox EU. Rival was the favorite all Phase 1. Here we are in Phase 2. Rival still the favorite. I think that they look like they are continuing to mesh more and more now that they've got their initial roster back together.
Yes, exactly. No longer with Dobbs in the middle lane, right? It's 50-meter fly or 60-meter fly, whatever he's going by now. Either way, he's going pretty quick. And he's been playing very well here for this team. And I think up until this week, I had felt really good saying, Rival are up there, but Dobbs' Disciples are right on their heels. That's going to be the team that'll catch them. I think Rival have earned it, man. I'm done with all that. It's just Rival. Good luck, everybody else, trying to catch up to this team. I really do think they finally got to the point where they're just the best squad. And Fly continues to be a nutcase. Even when he was on Dabos, he was playing very well for them too. So clearly that talent that he has can transfer back and forth. But like you said, it does feel like now this entire team is playing at a level that's hard to beat, especially when sometimes Predators can, take bad fights and still come out of them on top anyway in 2v1 scenarios. That's when Rival looks like you can't beat them.
Yes, that's going to be a bad sign for you moving
Yes.
forward, for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Rival undefeated so far, 6-0, have really wiped the floor with everybody else. Dabo's Disciples have taken care of business against Hive Central and Team Jellyfish,
Right.
but have yet to defeat Team Rival here in this phase. As for Xbox PS4, Nemesis was the runaway team in Phase 1, Was not the case until recently here in Phase 2, but they have reclaimed their top spot.
Yeah, that's right. Nemesis is still looking strong, but remember, Big Money are still out there and playing really, really well. That's the team that's actually been impressing me, and Nemesis had to do a little bit more if they want to make sure that they're able to get all the way back up there towards that top spot there in PS4, and that's why I was saying that they're still fighting to try and earn that top spot. And it's no surprise, right? I mean, a lot of really good, talented players that are still on Big Money. No surprise they've been doing well.
No, and Nemesis not quite number one in the standings again quite yet, if I remember correctly. They're sitting at 4-2, and Big Money sitting at 5-1. So those two, I mean, Nemesis has got to win their head-to-head against Big Money coming up, and then you've got to hope that Big Money ends up stumbling a little bit down the line as well. And that's crazy to think. The Nemesis is sitting at 4-2 right now with all the competitive experience they have underneath their belts.
Yeah, and it's not just Big Money. They dropped 1 to Big Money and 1 to EBOG here at this point. So they've struggled against both those two teams. They have been playing with Coils. They've had Covey listed as a sub for that team.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's Covey not being able to play or exactly what it is with the team. I haven't had a chance to reach out to them yet. But maybe they think Coils is their better look, or they've just been waiting until Covey can get back in there. But either way, they've had some struggles.
I think I recall seeing on Twitter that Covey's stepping down and taking some time away.
I wonder if that hurts him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dude who has a lot of competitive experience, so certainly is an option. Okay, we saw it on top 5 plays, but Wolves did some stuff.
Yeah, turns out Wolves is really good at Smite. You know, everyone else's card, I've got all this analysis and all their matchups coming up. For Hype Unit, I didn't write anything down because they're just really, really good.
They're better than you.
Yeah, they're better than everybody else that plays with a controller in their hand right now, and even some teams when they're on the keyboard and mouse. That's just how strong this unit is, and they did it through multiple iterations, whether it's inbound that support role, Chapo was there with them sometimes, whether it's Griffin that's for them on that team, or whether it's Crimson. It does seem that they're able to come together and not just be ahead of everyone else, but by a significant margin. If you are playing in front of a console, this is the team that you're modeling yourselves after and trying to beat right now.
Oh no, we have to see it again. Wolves did it to
them.
We get
to see it again.
Yeah, I mean we do, but I feel for Sanguine in this clip, man. I do, because you can feel the confidence. Like we've got
Look
him
how
surrounded.
low he gets here. They're right.
50 HP, and then they just get 20 HP just smacked like a bug. 3 people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never gotten 3 flies with 1 fly swatter, but I imagine it felt a lot like that to Wolves.
And Wolves, man, I think he's the best player on the console, and it's been that way for a while now, man.
Yeah.
He just makes plays like that routinely on King Arthur, on Odin, whatever it is you give him over there in that solo lane. He makes big plays. And then if you somehow slow him down, I don't know, maybe Layers or Boronic or Inbound or Crimson will make some plays. Those guys are pretty good, too.
That's the thing. I agreed with you. For almost all of competitive Smite console history, I think Wolves has been the best player until recently, and I think it's been his teammate Layers that has passed him.
I think I can hear you on that. I think I can hear you.
And it's like, well, great. And then you know who's probably number 3? Boronic.
Yeah, right
like,
there next.
good luck to the rest.
Just a stacked team, man.
Of the North American
And for what
SCL.
it's worth, Blanche has actually played really, really well. I've been looking back at them, Delny, Keegan, Fatal Ghost, and Garu. I mean, this is a stacked squad, too. If they were in any other region, I think they'd be the top team.
They'd be sick.
Yeah, unfortunate that they got to play Hype Unit all the time.
It's just like being a really bad team for a long time, and then you finally get good, and you have like a couple 100-game win seasons, and then you realize St. Louis Cardinals are in your division, and you'll never get a chance to win anything ever again. And I'm scarred as a Pirates fan. Someone please help me. Finchu, thank you very much for joining us to talk some SCL. The minor league, there's been a lot of news and a lot of notes on that, so stay tuned. We'll be right back to cover the SML.
Pleased to meet you, human. I don't have a spirit animal because I am the spirit animal. Stay back or you will not like what happens next. You never know what we might be up against. This should keep us safe. Humans think I'm indifferent, but I just don't have any thoughts left to give.
Welcome back to Esports Weekly, everybody. The Smite Minor League happened just yesterday, and plenty of news and notes. But first, let's go over what happened in Europe, because this is a region that continues to get more and more competitive as the year goes on. Remember, Phase 1, it started out where everyone was exactly the same. They were all sitting at like 3-3 or 4-2 or something like that. And then eventually, Flashpoint and Simplicity broke away from the pack. But now they're starting to regress back, and maybe not so much regress, but the entire region is getting a little bit stronger. Horizon Union has joined as one of those expansion teams and have looked very, very good, including a big win up against Queso this week. I mean, that was impressive from Horizon Union, and if that team continues to get better, remember, it isn't just like this is a fluke. They beat Exordium, and then they beat Queso and just had a good week or anything like that. The week before, last week, they nearly beat Simplicity. Yeah. That Simplicity team. I mean, this Horizon Union team can really compete. They have to get over the hurdle. Queso is a team in the middle of the pack right now. Outcold Gaming is still a team in the middle of the pack. Right now, the top two teams in Europe, despite the region being close, are still clearly Flashpoint and Simplicity. And Flashpoint nearly ended up taking a spill to Outcold this week. Outcold looked great in Game 1, and then they make the fatal mistake of not banning Alquang against Johnny. Like, we've been knowing that you can't be giving him that pick, man. That game was close until, ultimately, it wasn't. Or no, I don't know. It just wasn't. On the other side, Simplicity, they had their way with Exordium. Exordium is a team, really the only expansion team that has not looked competitive quite yet so far in this phase, and that's to be expected with these expansion teams. It takes some time for them to kind of get used to this level of play, I think, and clearly has been a bit of a struggle so far for the Exordium boys, but I still expect Simplicity to be the top card. I think that they were the best team in the European minor league, really the best team in the minor league last phase after their performance, but I don't know, man. I really feel like Horizon Union's got some gas in the tank. Right now, we're all knotted up at the top 5-1 for Simplicity of Flashpoint. Both of them boasting a +7. Queso knotted at 3-3 without Cold, but those two do have differences in the plus-minus, where Queso slightly ahead. And then Horizon Union right on the tails of Queso and Outcold Gaming. So watch out. Make sure you tune in on Tuesdays, because the European Minor League has been a blast to watch. Now, on the other side of things, the North American Minor League was a bit of a rodeo, so to speak, this week. Unfortunately, we were only able to broadcast one of those games, and even that one had a bit of an issue. If you didn't hear, there has been a competitive ruling ruled against Grim Depths. I'm not going to go into it here on Esports Weekly, but that team, if you want to get more information on what's going on there, they have been removed from the league. Esports.com/SmiteGame is, or esports.smitegame.com, is the place to go to get more information on that. Otherwise, it's just time to move on, I think. The NA Minor League has been very competitive. Hype Unit took their first loss so far this year. It's been a lot of fun to watch, and I don't think we should let all this distract us from how good the competition has been in the minor league so far. So make sure you tune in on Tuesdays for that. As for this week in the SPL, if you've been watching the show all day today, you've known that Renegades have a big test, not just on Friday with the boys of Rival, but also SK on Thursday. And SK is not that far behind in the standings, one spot, but a lot of difference in the plus-minus. Feels like the top 6 have been beaten up on the bottom 3 quite a bit so far this year. And that's kind of the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. Sometimes that is how it feels a little bit top-heavy or bottom-light, and it just feels like the top end is so competitive that you kind of forget that the bottom 3 teams right now all have double-digit losses. No more than 2 wins in the case of Space Station Gaming, 1 win or so for teams like LG. But even then, I still feel like just about every game there's the glimmer of hope. Obey Alliance took a game off PK. LG beat E United in 5 games. Time for Space Station to pull the weight as far as the bottom end, looking good against the top end. Good luck for them against Rival on Thursday, but United on Friday. I really feel like if we're going to end up seeing SSG turn it around this year, this would be a great start. A victory against the team that broke the back of your squad in Phase 1. Hopefully SSG can at least have us have a good set and a good week. I think they will. I think we will have a great week of the SPL, so make sure you tune in Thursday and Friday, mixer.com/SmiteGame. Until then, if you want all the up-to-date Smite Esports news, Smite Pro on Twitter is the place to go. Follow me at Aggro on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you this week for the SPL. Until then, you can beach it.